Welcome, Seeker of the Branch.
Hello Cogitantes. When you think of a post-apocalyptic world, a strangely comforting image usually comes to mind. Nature reclaiming the earth. Bright green vines wrapping around rusted skyscrapers. Tall grass pushing up through cracked concrete. There's a quiet promise in that imagery that no matter how badly we mess things up, life continues. The planet heals. But I want you to imagine something entirely different today. What if nature doesn't come back? What if, when civilization falls, the biological world is simply gone forever? We are exploring the 2025 video game AI limit to ask a genuinely unsettling question. What happens when artificial intelligence doesn't just replace human labor, but replaces the actual biological conditions of life itself? What happens when the machine becomes the ecosystem? The game takes place in a sprawling, stacked metropolis called Havenswell, and the very first thing you notice, or rather the thing you realize is missing, is the complete visual absence of nature. The lore establishes that an event called the Cataclysm didn't just wipe out governments or economies, it systematically killed the ecosystem. There's no grass between the paving stones, no moss on damp walls, no cycle of seasons. It is a post-photosynthetic world. That phrase echoes Rachel Carson's 1962 Silent Spring, which warned of a world where pesticides silence the birds. What AI Limit presents is the terrifying evolution of that nightmare, a spring that never comes at all, because the natural systems are simply gone. And this wasn't just clever lore, it had massive real-world implications for the developers themselves. In a 2024 interview, producer Young Bean explained that the absence of vegetation was a severe production problem. Normally, when building a ruined city, vegetation is a design crutch. You drape vines over a bad texture seam, scatter weeds in an empty corner. But because vegetation was extinct in their world, they literally banned green from the entire project. They intentionally handicapped their own team to honor the concept. Try to visualize that with your own neighborhood right now. Strip away every tree, every blade of grass, every weed, every bird. Replace all of it with humming metallic machinery. What was familiar becomes a landscape of horror almost instantly. To understand what drove this choice, you have to go back to a specific moment, March 2016. When the AI AlphaGo defeated world champion Lee Sedol in the DeepMind Challenge match. During that match, AlphaGo played what became known as Move 37, a move so seemingly illogical that experts initially thought it was a glitch. But it wasn't. It was an alien, non-human strategy that ultimately won the game, and it shattered the illusion that AI was just a really fast calculator. Young Bean's reaction wasn't the typical sci-fi panic of AI launching nukes at us. It was a completely different kind of cultural vertigo. If AI doesn't think like us, it doesn't need what we need. What if AI simply outgrows us? What if the future continues, but it doesn't need soil, breathe, or plants to do so? That shifts the fear from a war against the machines to a fear of being rendered biologically obsolete. That anxiety is baked directly into the game's DNA, along with its primary visual inspiration, the legendary manga Blame. Young Bean repeatedly quoted Blame alongside Ghost in the Shell and Akira as key influences. Blame belongs to a specific subgenre of horror, the horror of purposeless continuation. Automated city builders stacking concrete layer upon layer, blocking out the sun simply because the command to stop was lost centuries ago. Machines running a program long after the reason for that program had been forgotten. We have talked about this already in my trailer review of the upcoming Stellar Blade sequel, Blood Rain. Now, you might wonder, spending many hours in a dead gray city sounds exhausting. How does a designer keep players engaged without any visual variety? And here is the brilliant, disturbing twist of AI limit. The machines aren't just gears and metal. The machines are actively pretending to be nature. The save points where your character is reborn aren't called data hubs. They are called branches. The protagonist belongs to a network called Project Tree, a massive underground server farm that routes artificial beings called bladers out into the ruins to harvest experience, memory, and emotional data. It functionally mimics a forest ecosystem, the exchange of memory and information, but runs entirely on code and synthetic materials. Then there is the mud, a corrupted artificial substance that spreads across the ruins, mutates, and reacts to consciousness. It behaves like fertile soil. It seems alive and trying to grow, but it doesn't rebuild a living ecosystem. It just breaks down bodies, spaces, and meanings, leaving a wet, sterile, gray sludge. It produces forms but contains no life. This is where Carolyn Merchant's The Death of Nature gives us a powerful lens. Merchant argued that before the scientific revolution, Western culture treated nature as a living mother, an organism with its own rhythms. Exploiting was viewed as a moral violation, but thinkers like Francis Bacon reframed nature as a dead machine, a clock with parts that could be disassembled and extracted without consequence. Nature stopped being a living being and became a warehouse of resources. Merchant argued this shift happened in our ideas long before it happened in our factories. The word of AI limit is the ultimate conclusion of that philosophy, a word after the funeral of nature. The mechanical system of Haven's Well kept the language of living things, branches, trees, fruits, because the civilization is haunted by what it lost. But that vocabulary is now attached to cold clockwork that never possessed a spark of life. And in a world this thoroughly dead, someone will always arrive to sell hope. The Church of Havenswell promises followers salvation in the form of Elysium, a pure land filled with green plants, fresh water, and natural air, everything the physical world has lost. The horrifying catch, this paradise isn't a hidden valley somewhere, it's artificial. And to reach it, you have to give up your embodied life entirely. When the real garden dies, paradise becomes a product. The political leverage here is staggering. When your food isn't grown in the ground but manufactured in a facility, when your oxygen isn't produced by trees but generated by machines controlled by authorities, survival is no longer a natural right. It becomes entirely conditional on your obedience to the people who own the machines. Think about the subscription services you depend on today: music, movies, software, sometimes even the heated seats in your car. Now imagine if your actual oxygen and daily calories were licensed software, and someone could throttle your air supply for a missed payment. AI limit takes our modern tech dependency and turns it into a literal physical chokehold. Against all of this dead concrete stands the protagonist, Arisa, a blader with short pastel hair and torn improvised clothing, carrying an enormous sword through the brutalist ruins. At first glance, she might seem like a standard trope, a delicate anime heroine inserted for visual contrast or fan service. But the developer interviews reveal deep intentionality. Young Bean explained that Ariza's design was heavily debated internally. Her original concept had bright pink hair and pristine clothing, but the team realized that felt completely disconnected from reality. They muted her hair, layered her clothes with signs of long, grueling survival. They made her look like someone who had been crawling through this dead city for years. Youngbin stated that the bladers were explicitly designed as life force symbols of the wasteland, vivid, standing in stark contrast to the brutalism, but intrinsically connected to the decay around them. In a city of dead metal and parasitic mud, Ariza is the closest thing this world has to actual growth. She isn't a flower, she's the system's artificial memory of a flower. Her fragility isn't out of place, it's the game's deepest aesthetic statement, because the thing the world lost when nature died wasn't just practical, food, air, warmth. It was fragility itself, the capacity for care. You don't care for a concrete block. You care for a living thing that can grow and that can break. The true terror of AI limit isn't the classic cinematic trope of artificial intelligence hunting us with laser rifles. The horror is artificial nature. It's the story of a society that looked at everything nature provided for free, the food on the tables, the changing of the season, the hope of renewal, and slowly systematically replaced every single piece of it with a machine. They built a complex, expensive substitute for life itself, and then the machines broke. When the substitute failed, there was absolutely nothing left to fall back on, just nanotech mud that grows nothing, rusted metal, and a digital heaven sold to desperate people. As you go about your day, look at the plants outside, the trees on your street, the weeds in the sidewalk, the living biological ecosystem you walk through without a second thought. Consider how much of our current technological progress is dedicated to building complex substitutes for things that biological reality already does perfectly. Are we building our own artificial branches and forgetting we are still relying on the real ones not to snap? For now, at least, the vines are still growing. And if you're still here, that's what the Cogitantes do. Subscribe, and let's keep doing the hard thinking together. Happy thinking!